Hi guys, we're going to talk today about shifting supply and demand curves. So in our last video, we talked about this notion of equilibrium. You'll remember that the equilibrium situation with the market is where we're going to get pushed to in the long run. We're going to situate on one price and one quantity, and that's what we'll actually be able to observe in the real world. Of course, even though you might observe an equilibrium, you don't stay there forever. It's clear to see when you're evaluating the prices of all sorts of stuff that you buy, they go up and go down. Right? So how is it then that you move away from an equilibrium price? You're going to see here this afternoon that this occurs whenever there's a shift, either in the supply curve or the demand curve. By either increasing or decreasing supply, we have the mechanism for changing prices in these perfectly competitive markets. All right, let's start with thinking about demand shifts here to begin with. I've listed here on the board something called the determinants of demand. These are really important for understanding how to work with our model. These determinants of demand are all assumed to be fixed for any demand curve that you've drawn. Right? So for example, I've got here on the board the demand for corn. Right? What that means is that when I draw D1, this demand curve for corn, it's drawn based on what I know right here, right now, about buyers' income, about the number of buyers that are in the market, about tastes and preferences for corn, so to say how people feel about the good, the price of related goods, so maybe other crops or things like that, and people's expectations. Do they expect corn to get cheaper, or more expensive in the future? So these are all assumed fixed, but they're not fixed in real life, so when they change in real life, that's when you're going to want to go ahead and change the demand curve. So the one that we've got here, I'm assuming that we're going to observe a change in the number of buyers. Right? So D1 is what we know about demand for corn initially, but then let's say more people are coming into the market trying to buy up corn. We want to show the impact on demand. Right? D1 is no longer accurate. We need a new one. If there are more buyers, it stands to reason that at all prices, you'll see more corn being demanded. So the consequence is that you want to increase the demand curve by shifting it to the right. As demand is shifted to the right, you see an increase in demand. It means that at P1, that initial price, there would be a shortage. Lots of people trying to buy corn and a relatively small amount available for sale. That puts upward pressure on prices as there's a shortage. And so we get pushed to this new equilibrium at P2 and Q2. So the effect of an increase in demand is that the equilibrium price is going to go up, while the equilibrium quantity rises as well. The takeaway to keep in mind is that the only time to move the demand curve is when you see a change in one of those determinants that we had listed on the board a moment ago. All right, let's turn our attention now to thinking about the supply curve. You're going to see shifts here occurring in a really similar fashion. Adjust my monitor a little bit so you guys can see over here. Here we go. And I've listed the corresponding determinants of supply. These are all the variables that we think explain the pattern of supply. And furthermore, these are the things that can cause shifts in supply whenever they change in real life. Supply determinants are input prices. So these are the costs associated with all the things that you need to produce the good. Technology, that's measuring the production process and something about the way that your good is being produced. Expectations, that's what people think is going to happen to the price in the future. And then number of sellers, number of firms. All right, so when these things change, you got to shift the supply curve. Take a look at the graph that we've got right over here. Again, I've got a hypothetical market that might work for corn. And I'm saying now that the change that we're going to observe, you might not be able to read this, is that the price of corn seeds is going up. Right? So it's becoming more expensive for farmers to produce their good. S1 was drawn based on what we knew about the price of corn seed initially. Now it's changed though. Right? And so the impact is that this is going to cause a decrease in supply. Now that corn seeds are more expensive, firms are less inclined to produce their good, and we see a reduction in the amount available at all prices. So that's a decrease in supply, causing upward pressure on the price of the good. As that good becomes more expensive, people are buying less corn. So the equilibrium quantity is going to go down. Again, the only time that you should adjust the supply curve is when one of these determinants is in fact shifting.